Hello and welcome to Wisdom from the Word. I'm Pastor Greg. Before I begin this message, let me first warn you that there may be some shocking and unsettling information in this video, especially in its sequels that's to come later. I will be exposing some of the darkness of Satan and his attempt to smother this world with wickedness far beyond our imaginations. Remember now, Satan is the god of this world, according to 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4, which says, "In whom the god of this world, or Satan, hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them." Total darkness. Imagine a moment in your life when you were in total darkness, without a single ray of light. It is so dark you can feel it creeping into your bones and messing with your mind. You turn your head from side to side and there is nothingness. You wave your hands around and find nothing tangible to grab hold of. For all you know, the darkness goes on forever and ever. The atmosphere creates an unsettling in your spirit, and you feel alone, imprisoned in a place that halts time and space. Something like you may see in the Twilight Zone episodes. Now, let me tell you about a place that I have been many times in my younger years. A place where no light exists at all. Some of you may have been to one of these places also. As a teenager, I absolutely loved the great outdoors, and I still do. But because of my health, I am inhibited from doing very much. Some of my buddies and I went on many hair-raising adventures as carefree thrill seekers, and it's only by the grace of God we are still alive today, and that's no joke. Without a doubt, our guardian angels worked overtime to keep us boys safe. Thank you, Lord. We tried our hands at rock climbing, sometimes climbing a sheer vertical cliff of 500 feet or more without any formal training. Yes, you're right, we were crazy for sure. We would also hike and camp in sub-zero weather, and we loved it. I remember many times waking up with 6 inches of snow on my sleeping bag and frozen to the ground. I couldn't even roll my sleeping bag up because it was stiff from being frozen. In fact, this was without a tent. We would just put a tarp on the ground and we'd lay out under the stars. But there was another sport, I guess you could say, that I loved to do more than just about anything. Are you ready for this? I loved to go spelunking. Spelunking. If you are unfamiliar with that word, it simply means a person who explores caves. I only had one buddy who would join me most of the time, but we had loads of fun. Now, I'm not talking about commercialized caves with lighting and walkways and guardrails and a tour guide. Rather, we explored what is called wild caves, or new, unexplored caves for the very first time. Some places that humans have never set foot before, that's where we love to go. In a later video, maybe I will share with you about my first rather large cave that I personally found on the side of a mountain. It had never, ever been entered before. I know because I had to dig an entrance to get into it. Let me tell you, if I was still in good health, I would be somewhere right now crawling through knee-deep mud, wading a roaring river 3 miles under the ground, and descending a 100-foot deep black pit to who knows where. Wow, that sure brings back great memories. But for now, let's get back to total darkness. Quite often my buddies and I would be several miles underground, taking a well-earned break from crawling and squirming through passageways so tight we had to take our helmets off and use them as shovels to dig our way through. Sometimes they were dead ends, and sometimes they would open into giant rooms and go onward for great distances. That's what was so exciting about caving or spelunking. You never knew what was up ahead, what was around the next corner. So when we got hungry on our trips, we would find a good place to take a break. We would eat a sandwich, maybe a candy bar, a peanut butter crackers, and drank plenty of water. And afterwards, we had a tradition to turn out our lights and sit there in total and complete darkness. I mean, your eyes were 100% useless. I suppose if we stayed long enough, our skin would have turned a dull white color, and our eyes would simply turn opaque. Now that's just a joke. I'm just kidding. Sitting there in the blackness you can't even begin to describe was like being in a different world altogether. Everything seemed to stand still, and time seemed to be no longer relevant. There were no sounds of the outside world at all. There were no jets, no planes, no cars, no sirens, no people yelling at each other. Frankly, it was serene and relaxing to us. Good therapy for the mind, you might say. And we just sat there quietly in total darkness. Then suddenly, echoing through the dozens of chambers, you hear a drip, drip, drip of water falling from the ceiling into a clear pool of water. Drip, echo, drip, echo, drip. Like a second hand on a clock, it droned on and on and on. It was wonderful, I tell you. Even though an occasional bat fluttered by your head as it was searching for its underground meal. Fascinating creatures they were. Little biological sonar systems navigating without any form of light. God sure is an amazing creator. In this underground maze of tunnels filled with boulders the size of houses, with stalagmites growing upward from the cave floor, and stalactites descending from the ceiling. It dawns on you how utterly helpless a person would be should all of their lights suddenly stop working. By the way, one of the cardinal rules of caving is to have at least 3 sources of dependable light. Usually we had old carbide lights or lamps, like the old miners used, mounted on the front of their helmets. These lamps produced acetylene gas when water dripped slowly into the carbide chemical chamber. Along with this lamp, we took a good flashlight, some extra batteries, and thirdly, we had wax candles as a last resort. Now, my friends, your very life depended on these 3 sources of light to get you sometimes miles back to the cave's entrance. Now, in that environment of total darkness, your mind can start playing tricks on you. You can start hearing and sensing things that weren't really there. One of those things was a fabled creature called a hodag. H-O-D-A-G. Hodag. I'll try to remember to educate you on this very unusual and unpredictable creature in part 2 of this series. You don't want to miss it. So as we sat in this dark and damp cave, we would often surmise, what would we do if our light sources did stop working and nobody knew where we were? By the way, again, the first rule of caving is always, without fail, tell at least one person where you're going and approximately the time that you plan to return. Else some future archaeologist find your mummified remains in a couple hundred years and you end up in a museum somewhere. Many things can enter your thoughts in a total blackout situation. An environment where you have absolutely no control over. No control over anything if your sources of light are permanently extinguished and mommy and daddy have no earthly idea where you are. Total darkness. That, my friends, is where this world is going. The difference is that this world is being plunged into spiritual darkness, a place that is void of all light from God, a place of spiritual blindness. This video is number 1 in this series on total darkness. Video number 2 will delve much deeper into unexplored areas that may shock and even frighten you. I know it unsettles me at times as I research for this message. So be sure to hit that subscribe button below to this channel right now so you will be notified when the second video comes out in this series. You don't want to miss this series. It's going to be very informative, but at the same time, it may put a little fear in your heart. But God says, Fear not, for I am with you always. Well, folks, I'll see you in part number 2 of this series, Total Darkness. Keep your eyes to the skies, for your redemption draws nigh.